our real estate market has really never been more kind of sectioned off and segmented off into different product types, performing at a different pace than other product types. So prior to probably the last year or two, and the storm, of course, had a major impact on that based on geographics and whether a home is elevated or not. And so prior to the last couple of years, if you said prices were up in Tampa, prices were down in Tampa, it was pretty much statistically lining up against most product types and neighborhoods. Now look, real estate is always going to be hyper local. You're always going to have some neighborhoods outperform other neighborhoods, but the reality was, if we said prices were up 5% in Tampa Bay, you could pretty comfortably predict that same appreciation rate was the same or comparable, not the exact same, but comparable around different product types. Well, what has happened the last couple of years has caused our real estate market, almost like the stock market in a sense, to have these little factions and little product types that are performing at dramatically different numbers than other product types. So like if you look at the Dow Jones, for example, you've got tech stock. A couple of years ago, if you all remember, we had a condo collapse in Miami that caused massive chaos. And then there was another one, I think, that collapsed. And so because of that, the state of Florida passed much more strict rules, and then all of the insurance agencies followed with guidelines of things that condo communities had to do or provide or inspect or survey to show that that wasn't going to happen to them. Well, those requirements increased costs for both insurance and to have those things done in those communities, and those costs end up getting passed to homeowners. So what ends up happening is, because our insurance has been in an environment, and even more so post-storm, where rates are rising, when you add all these extra costs and then you add the extra HOA fees to condo communities, it causes prices to soften and more people to want to sell because it's made it unaffordable for them. So what we've seen in the condo market specifically is a dramatic increase in the number of condos for sale, to a comparable number to what we saw during the Great Recession. The last check I had, it was between 12 to 15 months supply of inventory for condos available in Tampa Bay. Now that is a really big number. To put it into perspective, the entire market overall has around 4 or 5 months of inventory in most product segments when everything is blended in. Some areas, it's only 3 months for single-family homes. So to know that you've got 5x the month's supply inventory, that supply and demand curve is whacked for condos. Basically, it has become a massive buyer's market for condos specifically. Now, again, you'll have a community or a building here and there that's a bit of an outlier if it's in strong demand. And of course, the uber luxury stuff above a couple of $1 million, some of those probably aren't as applicable to this because that crowd, affordability isn't really an important thing for them. As important of a thing, it's certainly still important. So what I mean by that is it's caused the condo market to perform much, much worse than the single family market. Now, another segmentation. We have 2 major hurricanes that cause flooding and wind damage. The hurricanes didn't hit and cause damage in the entire area. One of them was mostly coastal. The other one was a little bit more broad in its scope, but nonetheless, there are a lot of parts of Tampa Bay that didn't really have any impact at all, and there are some that had a lot of impact. So basically, the hurricanes will certainly affect the entire market because it zaps our population growth. It canceled sales, freaked buyers out, it freaked sellers out. And of course, there's expenses associated with repairing homes. And then, of course, selling homes that are not repaired that end up showing up as lower comps. So overall, the hurricanes have a negative impact, but where they have the most negative impact is in the neighborhoods that got hit the most. So what does it end up doing in those neighborhoods? It pulls prices down and creates extra supply because people say, number one, we want to move now because we don't want to go through that again. And number two, we're willing to take a little bit of a break on our price so that the people that don't really want to move, now those become comps for those people. So it pulls the values down. So that's another segment of the market that's more impacted. The coastal areas and the areas that got hit more by the storms and the homes that were damaged. And then I think, so when you look at the condo multifamily segment of the marketplace, and then the flood impacted segments of the marketplace, and then a lot of other little things, you have a real estate market that has now a lot of segmented product types that are having different things happening. Whereas you might have a neighborhood that doesn't have any storm damage, obstacles, flooded homes within miles, do really, really well. It wasn't impacted as bad. And the suburbs might do better now as people move away from the coastal areas. Construction might do better now, but what it's caused is this fractioning of, pulling off different segments of the market, and then those segments of the market not performing like the rest of the market as a whole. And don't get me wrong, it's always been that way, but it hasn't been as drastic. And you certainly didn't have the number of these things that, happened during the same time frame kind of line up and all kind of bridge together. So that's the reason why there's so many obstacles in our real estate market and so much confusion out there. The other thing that I think is important for home sellers and home buyers to recognize, number one, we still have a real estate market and an economy that's fundamentally healthy once this stuff kind of clears out from a single family home perspective. The condo market, it's going to take a while for that to clear up. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, if you own a condo right now, it's like owning a stock that's been declining. And again, doesn't apply to every neighborhood, but the majority of them are declining. So you own a stock that's going down in value, and do you want to write it down or do you want to get out before it gets worse? And unfortunately, there are a lot of home sellers that put their condo on the market right now, and they're not willing to listen to reality. Well, 6 months ago, this happened. Well, the last 6 months, it's been a bloodfest. And it's probably going to continue because we're 13 months of inventory. But condo owners, again, and I mentioned this before, if you have a condo on the market and it hasn't sold, lower your price. And I don't mean like $5,000. I mean lower your price, like dramatic lowering of the price, because the buyers that are out there, they know everything that's the reason you're selling. They know the reason you're selling. And for them to take on the risk, they want a deal. Can't go back to what happened 3 or 6 months ago. It's fantasy land. It's gone. It's over. Can't talk about what happened 6 months ago in a condo sale and expect that you're going to get that today. The market has shifted, and sellers today have to get very aggressive with their price. They're going to move their property, or of course, have by far the best condition. So that's really what it boils down to. Real estate is always boiled down to when the market gets competitive. Now look, when the market isn't as competitive. When the market's competitive, everything sells. Anyone could sell real estate. Printing money at 2% and 3% interest rates. Everyone's a buyer. People are buying as much as they can. The market's skyrocketing prices. Everyone's winning. You can mess up and overpay for a property, but a year later it's worth more because the appreciation rate's so dramatic. That's not what we have now, okay? We have a completely different market where now you have a lot of homes on the market, okay? And you've got to compete. So you've got to have the best price, best condition. You've got to have some strong differentiating factor. I mean strong, not some weak answer to be able to justify just getting yours sold, much less getting a reasonable value. Buyers know why all the condos are on the market. They can see the news. They can read the data. They know what's going on. They know insurance and HOA fees are going up. They know about the milestone surveys. No, and they can do the math. They can see there's 26 units for sale in here and one sold last month. What does that mean? That means they should be able to get a deal and a steal. And if they can't, they just keep waiting until they can. And eventually, someone else in that community will be the person that sells to the next buyer and not you, unless you're willing to get really real about your price. So if you get real about your price, you'll move your property today. If you don't, you're just going to sit on the market and flounder, especially as a condo with 15 months supply of inventory. And that same thing applies to single family homes, probably just not as drastic and not as substantial in some neighborhoods where it didn't have as much storm impact and it's doing a little bit better. Hopefully that's helpful for you to understand kind of the overreaching theme of what's happening in real estate market right now and why we're having these different factions where our real estate market is more segmented into different product types and areas that it pretty much ever has been.